What's up, world? This is Real Talk about real business, a podcast featuring a different guest each episode. Join me as we are given the opportunity to hear their story, the battles they face, the obstacles they've overcome, the losses they've incurred, the lessons they've learned, the memories they've made, the lives they've touched, the wins they've had, the opportunities yet to present themselves. Who am I? My name is Mason, and for the past decade, I've been grinding and hustling on a level you would understand. I've sold everything, from candy bars to big screens. I own the #1 electronics store in Las Vegas called Best Deal in Town. It's been my primary focus and my pride and joy for the last 6 years. It's given me opportunities I never would have thought of impossible. It's introduced me to people I never thought I would know. I don't have all the answers. In fact, I have very, very few. But what I do have are a ton of questions. And that's my story. Join me as we talk with real people who have really done it, with real hardships and real success. Despite all the odds, despite all the naysayers, all the constant negativity, and the ever-mounting uncertainty that we are faced with every single day. This is their story on Real Talk. All right, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Real Talk. Today, we are joined for someone who has worked and advised hundreds of companies, including over 10 different startups, where he has a long track record of success in multiple industries. He's been a VP of sales 8 times. 2 times he's been a CMO, and 1 time he's been a division of a $100 million IT service company. He did all that before he pivoted to become a business growth coach in 2015. Prior to that, he had 5 successful outcomes, 2 IPOs, 7 acquisitions, and even turned one around during the 2008 financial crisis. Our guest today, Bill Flynn, is a multi-certified growth coach, including MG100. He has a certificate with distinction from the Foundations of Neuro Leadership. He's a certified predictive index partner. He's an author and an international speaker. If you go check out his book, which is a best-selling book on Amazon, Further and Faster, you'll see that it has a 5-star rating. So, I mean, anyone who can put out a book and has a 5-star rating and has all these accolades and has a proven track record of success obviously knows what's going on. So today we welcome Bill Flynn. Thank you so much for coming on today, Bill. How are you doing?
Doing great, Mason. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Look forward to it.
Yeah, no, that's quite a long list of accolades, and I feel like I probably missed a few, even so. So you're quite an impressive man.
Well, as we talked about earlier, it means that I made a lot of mistakes as well. You don't have that many wins without a lot of failures.
I heard that. That's awesome. That's a great mindset to have. So, so tell us a little bit about what you're doing now in your current position, and kind of take it from there.
All right, cool. Yeah, you talked a little bit about it, but I'll give you a little more color. So I basically do 3 things. My primary gig is I'm a business growth coach. I work with leadership teams. I have a handful of clients, mostly in the New England area, Maine. I have a client in Maine, a couple in Massachusetts, and I have another one that's a completely remote company. We just meet in various cities around the country 3 or 4 times a year. And I teach them a framework that allows them to grow a really healthy and thriving business. So that's sort of my main gig. I also have a book, obviously. I'm an author. And I don't know if I'll write another one. I didn't expect to write that one. It was a little bit of an accident, but it happened.
Let me ask you a quick question about that.
Sure.
I've always wondered, what comes first? The idea that I'm going to write a book and then I come up with an idea for the book? Or you have the idea and you're like, this would make a great book? Kind of like the chicken or the egg question.
Yeah. So I have a ton of friends and colleagues who have written books, and I'm in a couple of organizations where 30 to 40% of the people in the organization have a book, at least one, if not many. One of the organizations I'm in is the MG 100 is a pretty high-powered organization. If have you heard of the book The 1 Minute Manager?
I have heard of that. Yes.
Yeah. So Ken Blanchard is the author. He has sold 23 million books. He's about 80 years old. He's in my group.
Awesome.
Michael Bungay Stainier's in my group, who wrote The Coaching Habit. It's sold about 1 million copies of that. Dory Clark's, who's written 4 or 5 books and is an HBR contributor, in my group. So there's lots of folks. So I think the answer is it depends. For me, I actually never. People said, oh, you have to write a book. You're a coach. You should write a book because it gives you credibility. It's sort of your marketing card. And I said, one, I hate to write, so I didn't really want to write a book. Second is they've all been written, right? To me, there's so many different books that say the same exact thing.
How many leadership books can you write, right?
Exactly. So, and it's all the same stuff. It's from Drucker and Deming and Shine and McGregor and all these guys. Some of them wrote this stuff 100 years ago. And now we've got Porter and Collins and Lencioni and all these guys who sort of they're just making it their version of what was already written. There's not a lot of new stuff out there. So I said, I don't really want to write a book. But my clients and my peers said, although it's the same stuff, my take on it was unique. So I was encouraged to write a book. And I said, well, I'm not writing it. So I had to wait until I earned enough money to pay a company to do all the work for me.
Excellent. Okay.
So I actually outsourced it to a company called Scribe Media.
So
they did everything.
Is that a ghostwriter then? Is that what that is?
So yes, there's a ghostwriter, but they do the design, they do the layout, they do the cover, they sign me up with Amazon and all the book places. They do it's a completely outsourced model.
So do they just prepare like a set of questions for you and basically interview you and then take that info and turn it into a book?
Yeah, they have a pretty well practiced process. Mostly what I did is I was interviewed. I think I was interviewed 8 times over several months. And the person who interviewed me recorded everything. And then she was the author and she actually I probably wrote 20 to 25% of the book. Actually, my words, my typing, whatever. And she wrote the rest. But before that, we met for hours and we went through a process, right? And they said, they asked me a whole bunch of questions about who's your audience? What's the message you want to have? If there's someone in the audience, what do you want them to say about the book? And so they made me really think through all this before we wrote anything.
It's cool to have someone like almost, I guess.
Yeah, it's made it so easy.
I wouldn't know how to like even start.
Yeah, I didn't either. I knew because I had friends who did it.
I would look off Word and be like chapter 1. Like, is that?
Yeah, right. And you're like, okay, now what do I do? Yeah, so it was very helpful. And I went from zero, a standing start, to a published book out on Amazon in 9 months.
Wow, that's fantastic. And when did that book come
out? March 17th, 2020, St. Patrick's Day.
What a time for a book to come out, huh? Quite an epic.
Yeah, we decided, we talked about it, and the book was designed for the situation that was COVID, to help you run a healthy and thriving business, to plan for the inevitable things that happen, right? We're 21 years into this century, and we've already had 9/11, 2008, and COVID. There's always something that happens every 6 to 8 years. And my book is one of the ways you prepare for the inevitable situation. So you have a healthy and thriving business. So when the inevitable comes, you're as well prepared as you possibly could be to withstand it and weather it.
So using that as like a pivoting point, like how did you learn all of these things in order to be able to coach it? Like, where did you get your start? How did you, I listed off, you've worked with hundreds of companies and 10 startups. Like, tell us a little bit about that, how you got into that, and maybe a story or two of some major successes and maybe some not major ones.
So how did I get into it is I've always been fascinated by how things work, why things became the things they did. And one of those fascinations was business, right? Why do so many businesses die? I wrote this in my book is if you started a business in 1994, you had a 50% chance of making it to 1999. You had a 16% chance of making it another 15 years. So the longer you're in business, the more likely it is you're going out of business. And that's just the ones who die. right? That's easy. It's over. All the ones that are living, a very large percentage of them are struggling day to day, month to month, quarter to quarter. They're guessing and they're doing their best to guess well. But most businesses either struggle or die. Very few thrive. And so I studied that and I read tons of books. And I think from the startup experience I had, for starting from nothing and trying to figure those things out. And then in the last 4 or 5 years, I really started to research, why do businesses thrive? What are their commonalities? And I found that there are definitely commonalities among really great, it's really leaders more than companies, because it's not a company, it's the person leading it that really makes the biggest difference. So this is like Alan Mulally at Ford and Boeing. That's like John Mackey at Whole Foods. That's Kip Tindall at the Container Store. That's Bob Chapman at Barry Weinmuller. And I looked at these people, and there are tons and tons more, dozens and dozens more. And I said, is there anything that's sort of the same? And I found out that there really is, and that's what I wrote in my book, is that there are 3 things I found that are common. One is they all understood that performance is a team sport. And their job as a leader was to create great teams or teams of teams, first and foremost. The second was that they understood that business is strategy and execution connected. Strategy and execution are not 2 separate things. They are 2 sides of the same coin. You execute your strategy. And then when you execute your strategy, you find out what's missing and where the holes are and what you got wrong or what you got right. And you strengthen what you got right and you try to fix what you got wrong. And then lastly, they all understood that cash is your primary financial growth metric. If you're going to grow as a business, it costs money in front of growing your business. You have to invest in front. You have to hire people before you need them generally. You have to maybe buy a factory or something. You have to invest in things before you need it. So when it happens, you're prepared. If you do it the other way, then you're constantly scrambling. You have customers that are mad at you and you're sort of missing things. So those are the 3 things that I found out were the same across all of these, 15, 20, 30 people.
What do you find is the most common detriment, I guess, in a business that would lead it to failure or to struggle on a day-to-day basis? Like, what are 3 things you're like, these are the most common things we see, and this is what people struggle with most often?
Yeah. So the 3 things that I typically talk about is that there is a meaningful gap between what science knows and what business does. We generally run our business on conventional wisdom and history. And history shows that it's not a good idea to use history because most of the time we fail, right? Yep. So that's a meaningful gap. The other thing I found is that the best businesses are simple. So my other phrase is few things truly matter in business and in life, but those that do matter tremendously. And you have to figure out what those few things are as a leader and just relentlessly and rigorously focus on those few things. And you see that like when Steve Jobs came back into Apple the second time, the first thing he did really was to say, oh, first we have to survive, right? Because they were going to run, they had 90 days of cash left. That was it when he came in. So he said, 1, we have to basically make sure this business is much more economical. So I think it was either 19 or 23. I've heard different numbers. He cut a whole bunch of product lines down to 4. These are our most profitable product lines. We're not selling these other things anymore, right? So they got rid of the cube. Remember the cube? So when Scully came in, he just started selling everything, right? He was doing the Pepsi model, right? Let's just do the lime and lime version, the sugar-free version, the whatever. And that was the wrong thing to do. You gonna say something?
No.
Okay. So simplification is a huge thing, right? Southwest is one of the simplest run businesses. They do the same thing over and over and over again. They are the most profitable public company in the last 50 years. They only missed 1 quarter in the last 50 years. And guess which one it was? The last one.
Yeah. So that's because like Southwest is like the same plane, like yeah. They have all these like standard uniform things throughout their entire company. Whereas
exactly, they have simplified the process so they can make profit, right? It's about profit for them. And then lastly is I've found that most leaders rely too much on luck, effort, timing, and force of will for quote unquote success. And those things just don't scale. So those are the 3 things that I found were the sort of the major reasons why, sort of the underpinnings of why businesses fail, but not necessarily why they succeed. Those are just why they fail, right? So I want to know, why do businesses succeed? And that's the 3 things I already mentioned, right? Team, sport, business, and
So what do you find is like that catalyst that takes a, let's say, a healthy small business to that next level of scalability, right? What do you usually find is that limiting factor or the growth catalyst there, where some guy goes from, maybe having one or two or three locations or smaller headquarters to, again, scaling and going
Yeah.
harder with it?
So great leadership to me is only two things. And I'm an iconoclast. I've had arguments with lots of people, right? They're like, no, leadership, you have to be humble, you have to have courage, you have to have charisma. And I'm like, no, you don't. I say, look, Bill Gates, not humble. Steve Jobs, not a nice guy. A lot of charisma, not a great guy. Warren Buffett, no charisma. But people would say that these are great leaders, right? So I think it's very subjective. So what I believe is what happens is great leader has two things. One is they have a compelling vision that they can clearly articulate to people. And that allows people to say, yeah, I want to help you do that, right? Leaders aren't self-appointed, right? You decide they're your leader. You volunteer yourself to your leader. So you can't say, I'm the leader. They have to say, you're my leader. And doing that is a compelling vision, or sometimes it's a compelling personality. It's something compelling. Like, I just want to make sure that happens, right? So you got to have that. The next thing, the only other thing I think you have to have is courage, because people are going to tell you you're wrong. There's going to be times where you doubt yourself. You're going to have courage to let people help you, give autonomy to people. Let people make mistakes, and which a lot of leaders don't have. They want to control everything, etc. So those are the only two things that I've found are in every single leader.
What have you found over the years that you've done? Like, have you in the last few years, now that you've been in your coaching business, have you looked back at things that as you were playing a more active role in growing companies and whatnot, and you were like, man, like I really missed the ball there, or dang,
totally.
or dang, that was something I really capitalized on, and I didn't realize like how,
more the former than the latter. Now that I've studied it and understand it, my life was so much harder than it needed to be when I was leading teams or leading companies.
What led to that?
I thought I had to have more answers than I needed to have early on. That I was supposed to know everything and sort of not rely as much on other people. I didn't really have a vision. I did that later on, like the turnaround that you mentioned in the intro. I did have sort of it wasn't a compelling vision. I just sort of said, hey, if we're going to be successful, here's what I think it would look like. And I worked with my team and we debated, right? And debated and discussed and decided, yeah, that's what we would want to be. And then I said, great, then let's figure out where we are now and how to get there. And we all sort of drew our own roadmaps and things. But I sort of set the standard and they met it. So those are some of the things I did, that were, I didn't lead people very well. I was not a brain friendly leader. I didn't know, but I inadvertently put people in threat mode all the time.
How so? How so?
So here's the story I always tell is that, so let's say you and I are in a meeting. It's your meeting. It's my meeting and you're my boss, and I'm running the meeting and you're just sort of observing and in the meeting, and the meeting's over and you sort of tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, Bill, I have some things I want to talk to you about that meeting. Can you follow me back to my office? So what happened just then, right? My brain went, oh no, what did I do wrong? And I'm walking behind you and I'm thinking, okay, am I going to get fired? If I get fired, am I going to lose I'm going to lose my house and my kids and I. So I'm catastrophizing as I follow you to your office, 1, which is a status symbol, as you sit behind your desk, which is 2, another status symbol. And by the time I sit in that little chair with no protection in front of me, I'm in full threat mode. And it doesn't matter what you say to me, I'm not listening. Or I certainly won't remember anything you said. Now, you didn't mean to do that, but that's what happens. And we do it all the time. You've probably had it happen to you, right? You might have done it yourself. I've certainly done that. Now, here's what you could have done, which is more brain friendly. You could have sat down next to me when the meeting was over and said, hey, how do you think that meeting went? I'd say, I thought it went pretty well and whatever. He said, you could say, I thought it went pretty well too, but as you know, one of our core values is Kaizen, which is continuous improvement. I said, so let's you and I work together to make this the best possible meeting it can be. So what I'd like you to do is put some time on my calendar, like a half an hour in the next few days. And I want you to bring to that meeting 3 things that you thought went super well that we should keep doing or improve on. And then 1 or 2 things that didn't go so well that we should try to fix or get rid of. I will do the same thing. And then you and I are going to meet every week until we've decided that this is the best possible version of this meeting. Now,
I like that.
Yeah. So I'm not in threat mode. We're doing it together. There's no uncertainty. There's autonomy. I'm able to sort of run the thing. It sounds fair. I'm not in the out group like I was before,
And you're still running a meeting without really running a meeting right there. It's just the setup's brilliant.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's the difference between the two.
So tell me a little bit about this turnaround you had in the financial crisis. Like what was it? What were you doing? Like what sort of vision was it that kind of, that sparked the new roadmap that took you guys where you needed to be?
Yeah, sure. And good use of the word Spark, because that was the name of the company, Group Spark. So I, between start of 5 and 6, my wife at the time and my daughter said, hey, do you need to do another one so soon? Because I'd done 5, over 15, 18 years. And I had done pretty well. I was 5 for 6. So I'm like, no, I don't have to. So I took some time off and, but when I took time off, I was a relatively well-known entity in at least in the Boston area. So I had friends who call me up and say, hey, I hear you're not working. Can you come help me do this? Can you do it for free? I'll pay you a little something. Maybe I'll give a piece of my company. I sort of had 5 or 6 different projects going on, if you will. And I said, fine. I said, my only rule is I'll work from 10 to 2, Monday to Thursday. And that's it. As long as you can live with that, I'm cool. And most of them agreed. And one of them brought me on he said, I want to sell my company. I need you to make me to look as big as you possibly can, because I was a sales and marketing guy. So I said, great. So I put together a sales process. I hired some people. And about 9 or 10 months later, he got bought. And it wasn't a huge number, but it was certainly good for him. He owned 90 some odd % of the company. So he was set for life. It was millions of dollars. And then he left and I took over. This was an email hosting company before Gmail, before Office 365. This is 2007.
Okay.
And so my first day on the job was the best and the worst day of my life. So when I took over officially, it was January 2nd, January 4th, 2009. That day, our technical infrastructure decided to collapse. We didn't deliver email to anyone. And that went on pretty much the same way for 2.5 days. And I got to tell you, when you don't have email for 2.5 days, you are not happy.
No, yeah.
You are not happy. So I lost 1,000 customers or so in a week. Then I had to go around trying to save some big partners. And these partners were hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in size. These were Ingram Micro, which was a huge distributor of computer supplies, et cetera. Also a company called Endurance, which was the company that bought Constant Contact for $1 billion a few years ago. So these were some pretty sizable folks. And I went around the country with my president of the larger company that bought us. And we're like, don't leave us. We're fixing it. So, but I had 60 people working for me. And I'm like, okay, I got to do something. It's like my first day on the job. I've never been a GM of everything before. And so here I am in the middle of a crisis, but I had done a lot of research by then. And I knew a few things, and I had some really good CEOs that I worked for that I paid attention to. And I said, here's what we're going to do. And that was the thing I mentioned. It's that roadmap thing, right? I said, what I want to do is I want to make sure that we look like this at some point in the future. And I need each of you to draw your roadmap from sales perspective, marketing perspective, technical infrastructure, computers, customer support, finance, that kind of stuff. So we all did it. And I said, we're going to work together as a team until we get there. And it worked phenomenally well. So when I started, I took over, it was a $9 million business and we lost about $1 million. It was about an $8 million business really, because we lost all that business. When I left, it was $14 million. I left 18 months later. That year I left, it was $14 million. So, pretty good size, pretty good growth.
Yeah.
I didn't lose one employee. Now it was 2008, 2009. So there weren't a lot of jobs to go to, but that helped me, but nobody left. We increased the average order size by 30%. So you can look on my LinkedIn and you can see all the great accolades. And so it really worked. And it was kind of a mini system from what I teach today. And that sort of stuck in the back of my head. That's why I'm a coach today, because of that experience. I'm like, that worked really well. I'd like to do that again. And it wasn't necessarily because of the metrics, of how everything grew and did well. It was because when I left, two of the guys that I worked with weren't young, but they were inexperienced managers. They hadn't really done a lot of this before, and certainly hadn't managed in this type of scenario. And they left. Two of them said almost the exact same thing to me, which was, the thing you made me do, this roadmap that you made me do, I hated it. It was really, really hard. But I'm so glad you made me do it, because now I know how to do it. Now I know how to run my team. And I said, I want more of that. And I did a few more startups. I did 4 more startups after that. None of them went really well. And I decided about 5 or 6 years ago, do I want to do an 11 startup, or do I want to try something else? And I decided, I pulled back that memory from that great experience. And I said, I want to try to figure out how to do that again. So I did some research and I found some places, and I joined an organization, which I'm no longer part of, but that's sort of how I got into what I'm doing today.
So like, how would someone what is like your typical customer like? What kind of company or business would contact you?
Yeah, it's not a company or business. It's a mindset. My best clients, and really the only clients, I pick my clients. If they don't have these 3 things, I don't work with them. They have to be humble. They have to be lifelong learners, and they have to be very comfortable challenging the status quo. If they can't do those 3 things, I can't help them. If they can only do 2 out of the 3 things, I still can't help them. They have to do all 3.
So are you more so coaching like individual leaders then, I guess? If let's say like a CEO or a higher level exec of a company needed help, they would come to you individually, not their company would source you?
So the CEO hires and fires me, but I work with the whole team. I do some, that's called executive coaching.
Okay.
I do that, but only by accident, really. Because I have this relationship with the CEO, I'm sort of a co-partner a little bit. We have conversations on the side, where we talk about people and things, and they ask for my quote unquote advice, or they ask me to take a look at it. But I don't do that. I don't do that on purpose. I don't have any executive coaching clients right now. I almost did a few weeks ago, but he decided to choose someone else. But that was a special case, so I would do it, but not as a rule. I'd rather teach the team. I'd rather work with the team.
So what does that look like? Do you go on location? Do you do stuff? And I'm sure with 2020 things were incredibly different.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. So I have 2 clients that want me to be there physically. One of them is like 5 miles away, so it's super easy. The other one flies me around the country. I think I mentioned earlier, they fly me around the country 4 times a year, and whatever city that they all coalescing, because they're a completely remote company, so there is no place to go. Anyway, and all my other clients are remote, so I just get on Zoom 4 hours a day, once or twice a month, and we do everything remotely.
So then, are you addressing groups of people then, like a boardroom full of people or an auditorium?
Yeah. So the most I've done is 12.
That's a lot of people still.
Looked like the Brady Bunch on my screen. It was pretty funny.
That's pretty cool. So tell me, what kind of challenges did 2020 pose to you?
It's
terrible. How did that affect you, and like personally and professionally?
Personally, it was stressful. So I lost 93% of my monthly income.
So you're on the East Coast, right?
I'm on the East Coast, yeah.
That's where everything kind of kicked off too. It kind of hit the most severe, I feel like.
Yeah, I don't remember where it was, but yeah, I think we acted quickly, and yeah, so I lost most of my clients. I only had 1 client left, and he was sort of a part-time client. So I lost 93% of my monthly income for 3 months. I had no monthly income except for like $1,000 here and $1,000 there for 3 months. And I have a daughter in college, and and I had some other things going in my life, so it wasn't really a good time to not have any monthly income. So that was a bit of a struggle. And then one of my clients came back, and then I got a new client. So now I'm up until that point. So I started my business in 2016. I had doubled in size every year up until 2020. And now I'm doubling again. So I was flat. I mean, it was still it was a decent year, but I would have preferred to double.
That's
And
good.
so
To have some affirmation that like you lost customers, but like they came back because they valued your services. So,
yeah, and a lot of them said that. They said, we would like to work with you, but we can't pay you. And a couple of them, I said, then don't pay me. Let's just work together. And it's, this is unusual. Let's, and it was the one because I picked my clients. I like my clients. Some of my clients are friends. I would consider them a friend. So some of them left me because so I had a study abroad company, and they got slammed because no one was studying abroad. So they basically fired everyone.
right.
And there were just a handful of them left trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces. Another one was the exact opposite. They're a lead generation company, and they got so overwhelmed with business because people moved the budget from trade shows and events to other marketing vehicles, and they were one of them they chose. So they said, like, we don't have time to meet with you. They were going crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy how some industries like bottomed and some industries topped.
Yeah.
Like, so I own an electronics store. So, I mean, we couldn't keep stuff on the shelves.
Yeah.
But I saw other businesses. I mean, like I couldn't imagine being in a restaurant during, all this. It would just be just so.
Some of them survived. Some of them figured out. Some of them didn't. I've been to a bunch of cities now, and you could just see all the businesses that are no longer there. It's just too bad.
Have you been traveling a little bit since the restrictions have lifted, or?
I've traveled 3 times. Yeah, I went to Salt Lake City in March. I went to Wichita in April, and then I just came back from Indianapolis yesterday.
Have you noticed any big, like you were saying, you did notice like some businesses that were and weren't there? That any other big changes that you saw, like long waits at restaurants or
traffic? Now that sort of things are loosening up, there's a lot more traffic. I also love that many restaurants are we finally caught up to Europe in terms of touchless, and paying. I mean, I always thought it was weird that, I would go to a restaurant in the United States and I would hand the credit card to basically a complete stranger who would then walk away and do whatever it is what they do with it and then come back. Where I was in Europe, they'd bring a thing to your table and they'd do everything right there.
Yeah.
So now I think we've leapfrogged. So I live in Concord, Massachusetts, and there are a bunch of touchless payment systems. They use Toast as their back-end point of sale system. And you just put it's a QR code. They bring you your bill, you put your phone over it, the camera sees the QR code, and up comes the app and you pay right there. You don't actually have to talk to the server at all. And that's to me, that's how it should be.
Right. I mean, I feel like it's like, how are we not there yet?
Yeah. Because our infrastructure didn't allow it, right? It was too expensive to switch over.
I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, it's cheaper to pay your server $4.15 an hour to walk over and do it than to buy a $300 piece of hardware. But
right. And I always thought that was funny. So I was in e-commerce in 1995. So I was really at the front end of e-commerce. And then people would come to me and say, well, I'm not going to put my credit card, into a thing. And I would say that to them. I said, so do you eat out? Like, yeah. I said, when you pay, how do you pay? Did you hand your credit card to this person who walks away and then comes back? He said, and you're comfortable with that, but you're not comfortable with putting your name into a secure, basically vault, that's actually safer than handing it to a person?
Well, you take carbon copies, remember?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And what's great, like I remember still in the early 2000s, even like people being like, I don't know about putting your credit card information on the internet. And I and now it's just crazy. You don't even blink.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's credit card has been taken. It's just a matter of, when you're going to get, if and when you're going to get it. Right. And they protect you up to $50. So you're only liable for $50.
Yeah. And that's why I always thought, like, use your credit card, don't use your debit card. That way it's not your money tied up. It's
exactly. I think it's tough right now.
So what's next for you? Or, coming out of 2020 was pretty crazy. I mean, 2021, it hasn't been exactly calm either, but where do you see yourself kind of moving forward and kind of, taking your coaching and where do you want to go?
Yeah. So everything that I teach my clients, I do myself. So I have my own 1-page plan and I do my quarterly updates and all that kind of stuff. So I have a BHAG, like Jim Collins says you should have, and all those things. So I want to make a difference. I want to make an impact. I want to touch 1 million lives before I'm done. I'm at about 30,000. So I'm doing a lot more speaking. I'm promoting my book on like podcasts like this and other places. I'm actually turning my book into a course through one of my organizations that I'm with, which will probably be sometime early next year when it actually is a course. So it'll get out to more people. So it's more of I have clients and I'll certainly do that, but I also want to make a bigger, I want to let leaders know that that the way that we're doing it for the most part is just wrong. We do almost everything wrong, but not to a great degree. But there's a theory that talks about tiny errors compound, right? And I think that's why a lot of businesses go out of business over time, is because you just make little errors, right? Your strategy isn't quite right. You're not executing pretty well. Your change model isn't quite right. You don't make decisions as well as you can, and that just keeps adding up. And you hire one bad person who then hires 3 bad people, and over time it's like snowflakes on a branch, right? It's fine for a while, and all of a sudden it starts to bend, and it's just that one snowflake, and then the branch breaks.
Yeah.
So I think that's what happens. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to let people know that you don't have to do it this way. It's actually your life. Most business owners' lives aren't their own, and it's unnecessary in most cases. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Cool. So basically, sounds like you're trying to scale what you're currently doing, and I think you're the guy who knows how to scale it, right?
Exactly. I call myself a pragmatic Simon Sinek. I'm an optimist, but I'm also an operator. I know how things work. So I want to help you with giving you inspiration and helping you understand that there's a way to do it, but also to show you how to do it, or show you a way how to do it. I mean, my way isn't the only way, but it is a pretty good way.
Well, sweet. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on today. If you would share with us a little bit about your book, where we can find it, all your websites, your contact points, give us the whole spiel.
Sure. So the best way to find me and everything is on my website, which is called www.catalystgrowthadvisors.com. My book is on there. As I said, I want to make an impact. You can certainly buy my book, and I'd love for you to buy my book. I make $4 or $5 every time you buy my book, or the Audible version, but it's also on my site for free. You can download my book for free. It's a PDF. It's kind of pain in the ass to read, but you can certainly read it.
Buy the book.
Yeah, there you go. And there are exercises that go with the book. It's a do-it-yourself book. So there are 25 exercises on my site as well. You can also book a meeting with me. My phone number's on there. Any way you want to reach me, go to that site and you can find me.
Sweet. Well, we will also put all that information below in the bio as well. So if you guys are watching this and you guys did enjoy it, make sure you give us a like. Again, Bill, thank you so much for coming on. Hopefully we can get you back on here in 100 episodes or so and kind of check back in with where you're at and maybe dive into another story or two.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mason.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Bill, and have a great rest of your week, my man.